Well, looks like we're back where we started. Hello everyone, this is Anime Savvy, and today I'll be taking a look at the sequel to Sword Art Online, very creatively titled Sword Art Online 2. I will be examining the successes and many shortcomings of it. Now, I quickly want to say, this video will assume that you have seen the first season already. If you haven't seen Season 1, I have a whole other review on it. As per usual, I'll be judging the show on the metrics that are on screen right now. 10 being the perfect score, and 1 being really awful. There will be a brief part of the video where I discuss spoilers, however, I will give a warning and timecode to skip to if you haven't seen the season yet. Also, consider subscribing if you do enjoy the video. And with all of that said, let's get into the review. Let's start with a synopsis of the show. The story of the second season, or at least the first 10 episodes or so, follow Kirito as he plays the new virtual reality game called Gun Gale Online, or GGO, where he allies himself with a girl named Sinone. They both enter a tournament to investigate a player known only as Death Gun, who can seemingly kill a person in the real world by killing their virtual avatar. And then a bunch of shit happens later on, but this is supposed to be an abridged retelling after all. I don't think the idea for the season was that bad, but the execution, in usual SAO fashion, wasn't half as good. For one, the story doesn't even start to pick up until episodes 4 or 5, making the first few episodes excruciatingly boring in many scenes. And a lot of the plot lines after that either never get resolved, or get resolved very abruptly. 2/3 through the season, it felt like the writers suddenly want to do a big new storyline, but noticed they only had 9 episodes to do it, so they crammed a bunch of stuff into the last third of the season. There were genuinely some good ideas and good moments in the second season, but they either fell flat because they went by too quickly, went by super slowly, or just didn't have a good build-up. And also the fact that many of the things happening felt very thrown together with little connective tissue, making it feel very messy. So much of it, especially the latter part of the season, had so much potential with really cool concepts, but was killed by poor pacing and a clunky narrative. It really is a shame. Trim down the first arc, extend the second arc, give a little bit of build-up, and that could have helped not just the storytelling, but also the characters. Anyway, that turned into a bit of a rant near the end. With all of that said, moving on to the next section. Now, onto the characters. First, let's take a look at Kirito again. I'm sorry that a lot of this video is turning into a rant, but I have to say something about Kirito in this season. If you've seen my review for Season 1, then you know that I don't like Kirito. I think he's generic, flat, and every other synonym for the word boring. So in Season 2, they decided to try to add depth to him. Try is the operative word here, because, they did not succeed at all. They tried to give Kirito a moral dilemma about all the people that he killed in SAO. Sounds great, right? The problem is that this is something that was never an issue to him before, had no build-up, and is only now troubling him for some reason. And this dilemma doesn't even really go anywhere, and only comes up when it's convenient for the story. Speaking of things that only come up when convenient, you can apply that to almost every character in this season. For example, remember Asuna? Well, hope you don't plan on seeing her much during the first 16 episodes of the show. Instead, we focus on Kirito and Sinone, exclusively. But don't worry, we have an arc about Asuna near the end of the season, where Kirito, Sinone, and almost every other character barely exist. Instead, now we're focused on this girl named Yuki. Also, remember Suguha? No you don't, she barely ever appears in this season. Point is, instead of carefully balancing the characters consistently, it just forgets about some of them entirely and only have them reappear when needed. Also, without spoiling anything, both Sinone and Yuki, 2 characters that had a lot of potential, ended up having resolutions to their story arcs, which ended up being quite unsatisfying. Also, the villains were shit. With that said, some characters did actually have some good moments. As much as I complained about her, Sinone probably was one of the best characters in the season. She actually had a personality and an interesting backstory. And Asuna, while still not great, was better than Season 1. And somehow, I ended up enjoying Klein more than anyone else, even though he was barely in the show. So the characters, while not awful, I definitely wouldn't call good either. In this section, I'll be discussing some spoilers from the story. You know the drill. If you haven't seen the whole season yet, then skip to the timestamp that is currently on screen. With that out of the way, let's start. For one, let's discuss Sinone. her backstory, and the resolution to that. She had an interesting enough backstory, having PTSD from having to literally shoot a man when she was a f***ing child. While interesting, I was disappointed with the payoff. Instead of it coming from within her, it came from some random little girl who was saved by Sinon or something. I felt like the writers were at the end of the arc and noticed they didn't give Sinon any proper closure, so they decided to shoehorn that scene with the kid in. Also, to speak on Death Gun, I feel very neutral about the reveal that Kyoji and his brother were Death Gun. I don't think it was a great twist, but wasn't that bad either. That's really all I have to say about it. Now, it's time to talk about the second arc. For one, the plot line between Asuna and her mother was one of the slightly better ones. It was a bit sudden and could have used a lot more time developing, but comparatively, it wasn't awful. So, I guess I need to talk about Yuki. She had a good backstory, a neat enough character, and brought forth probably the best moment in the season, that being her death. However, I really didn't care much about her by the end. They just didn't give you enough time to get invested in her. She's introduced pretty suddenly, so then you're just like, oh, look at this character, oh, she has a condition, this looks really, oh, the condition is worsening, what's gonna, oh. And now she's dead. I was sad when she died because I know stuff like that, people dying at a really young age, can happen in real life. Not because I was attached to her. You can't expect the audience to care when you give her, 4, maybe 5 episodes from their introduction to death? Anyway, that was a lot. Moving on. With spoilers done, let's get to entertainment. I gave Season 1 a lot of credit for this aspect of the story. With Season 2, it was just alright. The first half of the story, in some parts, was really boring. As an example, the entire first episode is like 5 minutes for introducing characters and 15 plus minutes having exposition. The second arc, while better, still wasn't as entertaining as Season 1, in my opinion. Also, the entire little mini-arc in the middle of the show, that being episodes 15 to 17, were so boring. I literally had to force myself through it. Even aspects that help with entertainment, like animation and music, still weren't that great. The animation, especially for the first arc of the season, really felt like a step down. I also noticed they used a lot more CGI than Season 1 did. Even the openings really weren't that good. So entertainment, probably the best part of the series, still wasn't very good. With all of that said, it's time for me to give my final opinions and score for the show. I gave the story a 3.5, the characters a 4, and the entertainment a 5.5. All of these numbers result in an overall score of 4.3. Yikes, I know. To answer the title of this video, How Sword Art Online 2 Failed, it's not just one thing. It's everything I mentioned in this video and a good bit more that I didn't have time to mention. So, do I recommend it? If you really enjoyed the first season of SAO, you might like this. However, if you're like me and didn't enjoy the first season that much, I can't recommend it. I'm mainly watching it because people said that Alicization, I hope I pronounced that right, was good.
Alicization.
However, that's still to be seen. That review might be a while off because it seems like Alicization is quite lengthy. But overall, I can't really say that I encourage people to watch this season. But hey, that's just my opinion. If you enjoyed the video, press the like button and, once again, feel free to subscribe so you'll be notified every time I post a new anime review. And make sure to comment with your thoughts on Sword Art Online 2. This has been Anime Savvy, and I'll see you next time.